This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
Welcome back to another edition of Issues in Education. Mondays during the Noon Report, we spotlight the issues impacting our schools with the one and only Dr. Ralph Kerr at the Teaching and Learning Institute in beautiful Houghton, New York. Ralph, we have much to discuss. These are busy days across New York and Pennsylvania when it comes to education. I wanted to start in New York. You know, a lot of districts are putting forth their spending plans for the coming year. And like you said last week, it is fiscal dire straits for many of them. How are districts able to ascertain how much aid they'll be getting?
Well, flip a coin, and if it comes down heads, it'll be close to what we got last year with maybe a little increase. If it comes down tails, we might as well close the store.
It's crazy right now. It's
really
all a guessing game, isn't it?
It absolutely is. The thing that really bothers me is, by law, the state is supposed to have their budget in place by April 1st. That doesn't seem to matter. I remember a few years ago, I confronted our state senator about that and said, how do you expect school districts to fulfill their legal responsibility to produce budgets in a timely manner? But you folks just seem to ignore that. You can imagine she wasn't very friendly with that question, but that's exactly the situation, and it's ridiculous to insist that schools tell their taxpayers what their budget's going to be when the state doesn't carry their load in a timely fashion. And it's really too bad that the state has put the schools in that situation.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about one of your favorite topics, cell phones in the classroom. This made headlines in Pennsylvania this week. State Senator Ryan Ahmet says, I'm going to incentivize them doing away with these devices. I'll give grants to districts that set up these special lockers where kids can put them in the locker and then they can get them at the end of the day. I mean, he says it's been a total disruption in the education process. Is there proof, Ralph, these devices are a detriment to learning in school?
Yes, there is. There's been a body of research that does show there is harmful effect of social media on adolescent mental health. Teenagers in particular are on their phones almost constantly. The thing is, though, that nationally 77% of schools now have some kind of a ban in place, which I think is a good thing. And here's the positive of all of this. School districts now are showing data that bullying and disciplinary referrals have actually dropped since they instituted the ban. Mm-hmm. And also, and this is so telling in my mind, that social interaction has skyrocketed. People are actually talking to each other.
Wow, imagine that. Well, hey, the tuition assistance program, some big changes. You know, TAPs remained pretty stagnant for the last 25 years, and critics are saying this is why kids aren't going to college. They can't afford it because we've made the guidelines so strict. The minimum payment of $500 is now $1,000, and they're also expanding the income eligibility guidelines for TAP. Do you think, Ralph, this will work in boosting those college enrollment numbers?
Well, I think it will help, particularly this year with the FAFSA debacle that the feds got the schools into. So any money that can come to parents that are trying to make a decision with their teenager about which school to go to is really helpful. The only downside of that, I would say, is it's like the loan forgiveness program. Where is that money coming from?
And it's probably why the state budget was $4 billion more than what the governor suggested just a couple of months ago. Now I think it's up to like $237 billion. So what's a couple billion if you're talking,
who's counting?
Yeah, who's counting? Come on. And then finally, Ralph, there was an interesting article in Pennsylvania this week about the 4-day work week at school. Something like 900 districts across the country and 25 states have adopted this. Pennsylvania does allow it, but not many have adopted this voluntary program. Why do you think that is?
Well, partially because the studies that have been done so far show that cost savings are really minimal. Most school budgets are made up of like 85% of the budget is pay, salaries, and benefits, and that's not going to be impacted by going to a 4-day school week. Also, what the research has shown is that longer days are really tough on younger children.
Yeah.
It also impacts sports and clubs, and it also impacts parents. Again, the research is showing that while it may have been conceptually a good idea, practically it turns out to be less beneficial than people may have thought from the beginning.
All right. And just like that, our time is up. But, hey, we've been a lot of places the last 5 minutes. If you have a question about any of the topics discussed on today's show, I'm sure Dr. Kerr would love to hear from you. Ralph, where can folks find you online?
They can simply go to whyrun.org, whyrun.org.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.